Welcome to the Secrets of Success podcast, a series for recruiters by recruiters. I'm Danni Reinert, and in each episode I have candid conversations about careers in recruitment with some of the best talent that Team Eames has to offer. They'll be giving you a glimpse into the highs and lows of their recruitment careers, their motivations and drivers, and their secret to success in the industry. You can listen and subscribe on Apple, Spotify, and other favourite podcast platforms. Let's meet our next guest. Good morning, Chigs. How are you doing?
Morning, Danielle. How are you doing?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Thanks for joining us this morning for another Secrets of Success session.
No problem.
Excellent. So, first question for people who don't know you that are watching this, could you give just a brief overview of your role at Eames and the market that you operate in?
Sure, yeah. So I manage the permanent banking finance team, banking and asset management, so financial services broadly. We have a team of 5 at the moment, and essentially candidates we recruit for are from the part qualified level up to director level positions.
Fantastic. And in that team, because we're going to look at, in particular today, your experience and advice to managers in the recruitment industry around hiring and developing juniors, something that you at Eames have had a fabulous track record of. We've got, one of our top billers in the UK business you brought through from associate up to principal level, which is a great legacy and something we want to replicate as much as possible. But that team, it's a mix, isn't it? We've got some ACs that have joined, Dan and Alice a month ago. And then we've got someone like Andy at that sort of senior principal level as well. So it's a real spread in that team, isn't it?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. So as I mentioned, main topic for today is hiring and developing juniors. We refer to them as associate consultants. That's our entry level position. I want to actually start before we even bring somebody on board as an AC. So as a manager, what sort of triggers the need for hiring an AC, and when is the best time to bring on an AC, a junior?
I think for us, it would be very much a time when you are busy, either you're already busy, inundated with jobs, or you're expecting an influx of jobs through a major project or something from the client that said, be ready, things are going to get busy. For me, that's important in the sense that when you bring ACs on board, you want a busy desk. In my opinion, the best way to get them learning is to get them on the job training, to give them live jobs, live requirements. I mean, we all know, those of us who have been in the job long enough, that pipelining candidates are important and speak to good candidates in your market when jobs come around. But there's nothing more exciting than when you first start is actually talking about a job and a vacancy, and learning the skills that we require in doing this job. So I think it has to be a busy time. It doesn't come without its challenges, because ultimately it means you're busy as well. How much time can you allocate to the training and the learning and development? But I go back to my point I was trained on the job, and there is no better way to learn on the job. We can give somebody all the theory, as you guys do through the L&D sort of sessions from their work first. They get the theory, they get the fundamentals, but like anything in life, and until you're putting it in practice, you're never really going to fully put that to its true effect and its true potential. So in short, make sure you're busy before you hire them. Otherwise, they're going to be kind of coming in twiddling their thumbs a little bit. And nice as it is that they're calling a lot of candidates, get buzzed, but it's not quite the same, right? As working.
Absolutely, makes perfect sense. And there's a couple of key things there that I want to go into it in a bit more detail. One is the training and development, which we'll talk about in a second. But the other is, you mentioned kind of getting them on the phone, doing the job, speaking to people. It's a fine balance, isn't it? When you're, obviously a big part of working at Eames is about being credible, being a market specialist, being able to provide a really high quality of service to our candidates and our clients. So how do you strike the balance right? And I know it's something that we've talked about a lot as a business, between getting the theory into the ACs and training them and building their confidence and kind of doing all the role plays and all that kind of stuff, and then getting them on the phone quick enough that, they don't have a fear of the phone. They're happy to just pick it up. It becomes really natural. But at the same time, they've got enough credibility to speak to those candidates and meet the level that's kind of expected and required from somebody at Eames.
Yeah, I think the key point to always address firstly is a lot of people tend to overcomplicate what this job is in terms of recruitment, right? And I think from day one, you've got to keep it simple, right? You've got to understand that the clients and the candidates we recruit for, particularly when you speak to candidates, they don't expect you to know the real intricacies of what they do on a day-to-day basis. Everyone feels you need to. It helps, right? But it's not going to be the deciding factor whether you're successful or not. We are coming in it from a recruitment perspective, you know, from a hiring perspective, and it's important that we come in with questions in terms of what are people looking for in their search, what's important. We can direct our conversations from there. That's the value that they are actually looking in from us, is what is the market doing, what are the trends, you know, what can I do with my profile. So that's the type of information I would spend with my ACs originally, is giving them the key general market info at the moment, and say, look, if someone asks you how's the market, these are the kind of key points and the outlines of both. Don't be afraid to say that you've just started, you know, because that's, you know, these days everyone's got LinkedIn, they've got profiles. If you almost try and blag how much experience you have, they're going to find out straight away.
Yeah, absolutely.
People like honesty, and I always say that like you said, credibility is absolutely key. But alongside it, there's like three things I feel, particularly candidates, you know, and clients, but for ACs when they first speak to candidates, are looking for with consultants. And you know, one of them is credibility of the market, which comes over time. Second is like trust and honesty, right? And I think if you set that tone from day one and essentially say, look, I have just started, you know, if somebody asks you a difficult question, there's no shame in that, right? And say, I will go back to my manager and my senior consultant and just get that information. People admire honesty. They admire that you don't know something, right? That's a skill in itself, to admire that you don't know, admit that you don't know something. And thirdly, that they like you. You know, that's likability is absolutely important. Nobody wants to talk to somebody they don't like in any walk of life, generally. If they can choose not to, right? So, so I think those three factors are important. But credibility, we going back to that, the key thing that's going to build, or the factor that's going to build it, is meeting candidates, right? It's get them on the phone, make sure the candidate wants to continue working in the role, because there's often a misconception that somebody doing the job now is going to want to do the same type of job in their next move. So we need to, so are they relevant to us? Do they still want to operate in the verticals that we recruit in, and what their CV is? If the answer is yes, then, you know, as quickly as possible, we should be getting a very brief summary of a screening of what they're looking for, and suggest meeting them, because that's how you're going to build credibility. That's how you're going to find out about the market. We talk about market information, and we can get them from candidate meetings, from client meetings that we have, and we can kind of recycle that information and then kind of share it with other companies, other candidates. So, you know, it works that way. But the best way is, you know, throw yourself on the phone, find out more. Don't be afraid, because you are just talking to other people, right? And I think
human beings, sometimes that can get forgotten, can't it? You're literally talking to human beings. But I think we also do empathise with ACs that, you know, it is daunting and it is a bit scary. And, you know, being an AC, and I wrote a blog on this the other day, you know, asking somebody what their salary is. That's a really strange question to ask someone. We grow up knowing that, you know, we're quite polite, and you wouldn't say to your mum and dad necessarily like, oh, what do you earn? Or you don't really talk about money and stuff. So then suddenly in your third day in a business as an AC, you're speaking to a financial controller or something at a bank, and you say, you know, what's your current salary? And, you know, how long have you been on that salary? And what's your bonus? And how long have you been earning that bonus? It's quite strange. So I think we can empathise with wanting to give the ACs the tools to do the job and the confidence, but nothing can replace kind of getting them on the phone and that experience as well. Absolutely.
Like anything, like I said, in life, is, you know, your skills take time to practice. You know, you can put everything in theory, but until you train in sport, you know, you've got to train to be the best. In recruitment, you've got to practice and go through the training process, you know, to be successful. It's the same fundamentals. But once you get over that stigma, you are, like you said, just talking to human beings, and really, you know, I think it's important to understand from day one the value that we can add to somebody's career, and to think of it like, rather than that you're just going to help them find their next job, you're going to get them to understand, you're going to help them in their career. I think a lot of people, you know, when they come in this job, or even the longer the sentence, they lose the value of what our title is, which is a consultant, right? Whether it be an associate consultant or a recruitment consultant. What do consultants do? They provide advice, they provide direction, they provide solutions, right? So if somebody's talking about, that's the key, is to narrow down on your initial call, you know, where are you looking to go in your career? What's important to you? And once we have that type of information, and you've taken the time to actually listen to that and present them with opportunities that actually relate back to what they say they're looking for, they won't forget that, and they will remember.
Absolutely.
Fab. A long way in your career.
Thank you. We obviously at Eames, we hire into what we call AC pods. So, and when they first join, kind of myself and the L&D team, we're responsible for training those guys, and we have quite an intense first few weeks, and then the first 6 months is mapped out and everything. But in those pods, we're obviously hiring multiple ACs that start on the same day. You've had Dan and Alice, who have both started together recently, about a month or so ago. What in your mind is the benefit to, firstly, the manager in your position of hiring multiple ACs at the same time, and also what benefit have you seen for the ACs and the new joiners of being hired into a peer group?
Sure. I think from my side as a manager, it's very useful to have two different people, because they're two different personalities often, right? Everybody's different. You learn, one of the first things you learn in this job, dealing with people, right? That everyone has different personalities. So the questions that you get during training sessions, that people are coming from different angles, right? Some individuals are maybe a bit more reserved at first, right, and get their head around things. They learn in different ways. Maybe they're theorists, or somebody's a pragmatist, whatever, right?
Yeah.
Different styles work well, and it also engages, both people at the same time to take other opinions on view and to see level sort of speed of learning. So I think as a manager, it's very helpful for me to kind of go into those sessions with people who've got different attitudes, right? It also means that we are cross training. We've got big plans to grow. Here at Eames, it's important that the finance team, particularly, we've had a really successful year, and we're looking to build on that in coming years. So it takes me the same amount of time to do the one-on-one trainings, the on-the-job trainings. I often try and position myself at the desk in between them, or as close as possible to Dan and Alice at the moment, so I can coach them on the job while we're doing the training. So impact, so it's just taking the same amount of time but doubling the impact that we could have.
Absolutely.
So I think there's benefit there in terms of the benefit to them as ACs coming into the business. It's just people to bounce off. It happened to me when I first started my recruitment job. I started with somebody at the same level, and it's really important, because there are certain conversations, maybe you feel that questions you don't even want to ask us as managers as much as we try and say to them, don't be shy to ask a question. It's human nature to you might think that's a stupid question or that's a silly question, whereas if you can ask somebody you just started with, you won't feel as apprehensive.
Absolutely.
Question. So I think it's important having somebody who's got the same level of experience as you, who's in the peer group, more to bounce off with.
Absolutely.
And you also, if I look back at the peer group that I started with, and that's not just two people starting together, but we've had a lot of associate consultants start in the last 6 months as our next wave in terms of Eames consultants. Is you build a really good peer group of friends more than anything, right?
I was just going to say that it's like a ready-made group of built best friends. I've noticed here they all go downstairs after work, and obviously we're in our new lovely WeWork, and they're all making very good use of the free beer and playing on the pool table, and there's a good little vibe down there, isn't there? So there's kind of the work support for each other, but then there's that kind of peer group, friends, all in it together, keeping each other up. It's important, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I think, look, any of us who've done recruitment know that it's essentially an emotional roller coaster, right? You have bad days, you have tough weeks, you have a good morning, you can have a tough afternoon, right? It switches so much. So to have that support and to have a peer group around you that you can kind of relate to. Like I said, sometimes you don't want to go to your manager because you feel a bit reluctant, you don't know them that well when you first start. So to be able to talk to people at the same level who are going through the same experiences, they can really relate to it. So I think it's really important. As I said, when I look back, you also make some good friends, and that's important in this job. Is enjoy the people that you work with, right? It keeps you in the industry, it keeps you in the company that you work with. If I look throughout the years in terms of my recruitment jobs, the people that I've met throughout them, some of them are still kind of very close and best friends of mine. So
absolutely.
It's more it can actually give you than just work. It's a lot more wider in terms of life in general.
Absolutely. Thanks. Makes a lot of sense. I'm sure it'll resonate with a lot of people watching this as well. In terms of kind of giving ACs the best start, one of the things we talk about a lot as a management team is kind of setting clear expectations. So in some elements, that's kind of the more housekeeping type stuff around, working hours, work ethic, and, kind of what conduct and the way you'd expect people to behave and stuff. And some of it is setting expectations around probation targets, promotion targets, weekly KPIs, all the good stuff that goes along with a role in a sales role and recruitment. What's your approach to setting clear expectations, and what do you think is really important for other managers to think about when they're doing that with new ACs?
Yeah, I would say first and foremost, don't give too much information too soon, right? I think we all forget as managers how much information there actually is to soak into recruitment.
Yeah.
That's both learning industry knowledge and how recruitment works and the key factors that make you successful. I've done it for almost 15 years now, and everybody else has been experienced. We kind of, take it for granted what we know and our knowledge, and we don't we forget, right, what we were like when we were coming as an AC and how much it took us to actually pick things up. Right? It seems an age ago, right?
A long time. It is an age ago for you and I, Chigs. That's the thing. It doesn't seem it. It is.
But if I take about, the key things that I remember from those times were, staggered approaches. I was given certain tasks to perfect, the key fundamentals of doing well. Once I proved that I was successful in hitting my targets on those, I would be moved to something a bit more advanced. So, initially what I would start on would be candidate qualifications. How many candidate qualifications, how many candidate contacts are we going to make in a week? How many calls are we going to get? From there, we're looking at meetings, CVs out. They're the fundamentals of any business, regardless of how far you go in recruitment in a sales job. Unless you can find good candidates, right, it's going to be very difficult for you to be successful. That's the basics, no matter where you go. So the element of originally resourcing, finding a candidate, which most ACs will do for their first core responsibilities, especially for the first 3 months and going into 6 months, they're still the skills that are going to be the most fundamental for them to be successful. So I would start with that. I would look onto pushing them onto meetings, getting them to, at first kind of me sitting on the meetings, lead a meeting, get them to understand kind of how a meeting's run, and then as quickly as possible, get them, shadow them in a meeting, get them to lead the meeting, and then, you're moving on to that, to interview preparations, to feedback. So there is a staggered process in terms of when somebody's ready, and then, from that anywhere between kind of 4 to 6 months, we realistically started looking at them going onto the client side and doing some sort of business development, following up their own leads. So look, don't throw too much at them and too soon. It's
makes a lot of sense, absolutely. And in terms of sort of using KPIs and kind of performance metrics on a sort of a daily or a weekly basis, KPIs, when I first started in recruitment all those many moons ago, that was just normal. I mean, I had like daily KPI, call times, everything, the whole lot. If you weren't on the phone enough, they took your chair away, all those kinds of things. We obviously live in a very different world now. And the word KPIs has almost become a bit of a dirty word. I realise sometimes we call them activity figures, and it's like, well, they're just KPIs, and we work in a sales business, right? And it's fine to say there's a certain amount of activity that has to be outbound and achieved in order to get the outputs that we're looking for. So how do you manage that conversation with ACs, and how do you use KPIs as a manager?
Yeah, I mean, I think fundamentally, the KPIs in any business, they're not just made up, right? They're through research, through knowledge of the market. We all have individual markets. They're all set, tailored to what our market and is appropriate to be successful. We've gone back. We've got a strong internal finance team that comes back and gives us ratios and our dashboards in terms of what constitutes success. What outputs do we need to put to get the results and the NFI that we're looking for as a team? So I think that is really getting people to understand from day one, these numbers are there for a reason, and these numbers will do. If you're hitting these numbers, will make you successful. Now, I've never been someone who's going to ram KPIs down somebody's throat. They are there as a guide to help people, to help them be successful, right? What it comes down to is really understanding that the success that you're going to have is very much going to come through your own drive, your own work ethic, right? If you hit these KPIs, that's going to help you do that. But if I have to be asking somebody in my team, why haven't you sent this many CVs, or why haven't you met this many candidates this week? I worry more so around kind of somebody's attitude and their drive, because we are here to teach people all the skills to do the job, you know, how to be successful, provide advice. That's the position I see myself in. But the attitude has to come from that individual. And that also means if they're struggling with KPIs, don't sit in silence, you know, come and ask your manager, look, I'm struggling with this part. I don't really know why am I struggling? Is there any more candidates I could call? I've got a list. I think too many people sit quietly, you know, from what and that's something as a manager I've learned as well, you know, is to see when people are struggling, maybe not, you know, hitting their KPIs, is not kind of sort of demanding why they're not, trying to understand where they're struggling and why they're struggling, and getting them to, it's in their benefit to really work to these KPIs, because ultimately it's going to transfer into money. So
absolutely.
I think that's the main key, is really, before setting those KPIs, is really explaining why they're there, why we place, and how those numbers have come about. And I think, and over time, you know, good recruiters you should know your ratios. You should know how many CVs you need to send in your market to get an interview. You should know how many CVs to jobs you need to get a placement. And that overall, if somebody's driven enough to be successful, they will relate that back to their financial targets. And, you know, that's what we're all here for, right? Is to be successful and to make money and to make commission. This is only.
Absolutely. I love that. I think that is so important. And I think, you know, even as somebody who has managed recruitment teams myself, and I was on the sales side, I'm just reflecting back now. And actually, that is something that I would have used more in terms of the getting people to understand where those numbers came from when it comes to the KPIs and kind of working it back. So that's brilliant. Thank you so much. So just to sort of wrap us up for today, what would be, you know, if you wanted a manager watching this in the recruitment industry that's maybe hiring their first couple of ACs, what would the one piece of advice you would give them be as kind of your main secret for success for them making a go of it?
I would say, at times you do need to be selfish, right? It can take a lot of your time. And, you know, you've still got a job to do, often as billing managers as well, you know? So I think you've got to find the balance. Don't spend too much time feeling the need to watch kind of what your ACs are doing. You have to give them a bit of freedom, you know? You have to kind of let them make the mistakes. I always say to my guys is, the crime is not making the mistake, the crime is not learning from the mistake, right? And really set the expectations early from day one that, you know, I have my own financial targets if you are a billing manager, you know, in terms of what I have to do, but I am always here to provide you advice and direction. That's what I'm in terms of application. You guys have to do that. I can't make you pick up the phone. I can't make you send CVs out. You know, that's got to be down to you, right? Then I will provide you all the support when you need me. But, you know, an old manager used to say to me, you know, there were certain times of the day he said, you know, don't bother me unless the question is about you making an actual deal, right? If it was an actual key question, then that was my time to actually be doing kind of my own client work or bringing in jobs, right? You need to, at the same time, the pressures that come as a manager is you almost need to bring in and feed some of the ACs, right? So you need to create time to do that. Otherwise, they're not going to be successful. If I look at associate consultants who have been successful, you know, it have been those who have got at early days jobs coming in, and you need to ensure that job flow is coming in. You need to get that they taste the money early, essentially, because it's a tough job. It's like we said, it's like I said, it's an emotional roller coaster. So, you know, make sure you've got the job flow coming in. Make sure you're there for support and advice. Don't close yourself off and say like you're never available. But you know, it's very easy.
Strike the balance.
You know, and it's a lot of the times what I found has really worked, especially in early days. Has been ask the ACs to actually provide solutions themselves. So if it's a question, they ask you something, you think they should know the answer, just go back to them and say, what do you think?
What do you think? That's what I got trained to do when I did my first management training. What would you do? What do you think?
And they actually know the answer a lot of the time, you know?
And that helps build their confidence as well, doesn't it, Chigs? Because it doesn't just make them a bit more self-sufficient and keep that balance between what you need to be focused on as a billing manager and supporting those guys, but it actually starts to show them that they do know the answers and they can fend for themselves a little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah, ultimately they have to understand that they're going to have to be as independent as quickly as possible in this job. Like to be successful, you are running your own desk, you know, once you get up and going, right? So, you know, like I said, what would you do? If I wasn't here, what would you do?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things when they actually reflect on it and go, oh yeah. And I think if you set that from an early stage,
Yeah.
they start to use their initiative a lot quicker, right?
Yes,
Whereas
absolutely.
you're always on hand, answering every question that they've got, they're going to feel that's normal, and you won't get any work done yourself. So as you touched on, all about the balance, right? Give them all the support, the advice, and all the training, but make sure you've set time for your own work and don't let that suffer, because that's the hardest part of being a manager, because a lot of people will, there's a conception that a lot of people think great recruiters make great managers, and that's not always the case.
Not always the case. No, absolutely.
It feels very different, and sometimes it's not for you. But if you enjoy nurturing talent, developing talent, for me, I get more joy watching somebody I've trained and sort of nurtured through recruitment process doing a deal than more buzz than me doing one. It's equally the same as me, because it's a lot more rewarding. But not everyone's like that, so you have to be of that mentality.
Yeah.
But balance your time effectively, and
Brilliant.
reap rewards for both sides.
Lovely. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Chigs. Really appreciate your time. And I think there's loads of good content there for people to kind of go away and have a think about and reflect on it and hopefully put into practice. So thank you very much.
Glad I could help. Thanks, Danny. Take care.
Thanks.
Bye.